Hey guys, thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. This is your host Thomas Dyer from On the Hot Podcast. Today, I have some bonus content for you guys. The bonus content I will be sharing today is my top 5 biggest what ifs in NBA history. But before I get into the segment for the bonus content today, if you guys haven't checked out episode 75, is now available on all 4 of our platforms: our Instagram account, our Facebook account, our YouTube account, and our Apple Podcast account. So go ahead and check out episode 75 if you haven't yet watched or listened to it already. But this is my top 5 biggest what ifs in NBA history. Anything is on the table, whether it's modern era, whether it's way back in the day. This is my top 5 what ifs in NBA history. Let's go to number 5, and we're going to talk about if Derrick Rose never tore his ACL. And it's unfortunate that this happened. This could have been this is one of the biggest stories in sports of the modern era, of Derrick Rose unfortunately tearing his ACL 10 years ago. So I think if Derrick Rose never would have tore his ACL, he would have been one of the best modern day point guards, one of the best point guards of this generation. When you talk about the names of Steph Curry, you talk about Russell Westbrook, you talk about Damian Lillard, you talk about Chris Paul, you talk about Kyrie Irving, the best point guards that we have seen over the last decade. I think Derrick Rose would have been at the top of the list. I believe top 3 in that list of elite point guards that we have seen over the last decade. And Derrick Rose has honestly been a special player. He's always been a special player, even after the injury. Never recovered the right way, never been able to get back to the way that he once was. But his athleticism was unmatched. He had the speed. He was one of the fastest guys in the league, controlling the ball at the point guard position, dominating in the paint like a playmaking slasher that you would make, a 2K build that you would create. This guy was like a video game like guy out there on a nightly basis on the basketball court. Unfortunately, this torn ACL brought him down. His accolades for being in his prime, at the top of his game for just a short amount of time. He was the rookie of the year in the 2009. He was rookie of the year in the 2009 NBA season, and became the youngest player in NBA history to win the MVP award at just 22 years of age during the 2011 NBA season. And we're talking about prime Derrick Rose. He padded up the stat sheet pretty well, but he helped the Chicago Bulls get to a 62-20 record in 2011, and helped the Chicago Bulls get all the way back to the Eastern Conference Finals, something that they haven't done since the late 90s when they had Michael Jordan, Scottie Pippen, and company on that Chicago Bulls team. Derrick Rose helped the Chicago Bulls get back to that ceiling. Unfortunately, came short against the LeBron James and the Miami Heat team, the Big Three in 2011, losing in the Eastern Conference Finals and a gentleman's sweep 4-1. But Derrick Rose, we're talking about a 22-year-old kid, did something that nobody has been able to do for Chicago since Michael Jordan, Scottie Pippen, and company have left that franchise. So definitely deserves a lot of love for that. Doing that for the city of Chicago. Then we talk about the torn ACL when it took place. Unfortunately, the following year it took place in the first round of the NBA playoffs when they were the number 1 seed, taking on the 8th seeded Philadelphia 76ers. He tore his ACL with a minute and some change left in the very first game of the playoffs. Unfortunately, could never come back as the same player, coming back from a gruesome injury. We seen his time with the Chicago Bulls only last just a tad bit longer before he was traded to the New York Knicks, and the rest is history of how his career has unfolded after this torn ACL. It's hard for a player to come back after that gruesome injury. The way his style of play just couldn't be duplicated back from a torn ACL. He's never been the same. Speed-wise, has never been the same. Playmaking-wise, has never been the same. But it's unfortunate, and I think that's one of the biggest what-ifs in sports history. If Derrick Rose never tore his ACL, unfortunately, that's for me at 5. And number 4, we have Kobe. What if Kobe Bryant and Shaq never split up? We're talking about Kobe Bryant, one of the best shooting guards of all time. We're talking about Shaq, one of the biggest and dominant, best big man of NBA history. Kobe Bryant and Shaq dominated together, going on a three-peat back in the day. We're talking about when they won the championship in 2000, when they won the championship in 2001, when they won the championship in 2002, completing a three-peat. And they went to the NBA Finals for a 4th time in 2004. Unfortunately, lost to the Detroit Pistons, got gentlemen swept to them, lost that series 4-1. but the chemistry was undeniable between Kobe Bryant and Shaq. The chemistry down the stretch, however, was becoming an issue between the two. They did not see eye to eye with a lot of things, and that is what transpired and why this duo eventually broke up with each other. Now, if the flip was starting one of the reasons why I just said was chemistry, but another reason why the duo was ultimately set to break up and split up was because the flip had been switched at this point. Them playing together. Kobe Bryant was the backup behind Shaq. He was the sidekick to Shaq. Now that we were seeing a flip, this was when we were seeing prime Kobe Bryant coming to his prime, and when we were seeing Shaquille O'Neal take a little step back. It was starting to become a flip role in that for the Lakers. Kobe Bryant being the star and Shaq being the backup, the sidekick to Kobe Bryant. And I think they could have continued to do great things together if Shaq was not traded after the 2004 NBA Finals. Not even a month later, after they were gentlemen swept to the Detroit Pistons, Shaquille O'Neal was traded for a blockbuster trade involved with the Miami Heat, which saw Shaq go to the Miami Heat. We know the history after that. A few years later, him and Dwayne Wade won a championship with the Miami Heat. But the team was loaded when you talk about this roster that Kobe and Shaq did have together. They had Kobe Bryant, they had Shaquille O'Neal, they had Karl Malone, they had Gary Payton, they had Phil Jackson, one of the best, if not the best NBA coach in history coaching them. This team could have at least won 2 to 3 more championships. The Western Conference wasn't as loaded as what it did become in the up and coming years, but I still believe they could have at least got 2 to 3 more championships together. That is my 4th biggest what if in NBA history if Kobe and Shaq did not break up. And at 3, this is a huge one right here. Chris Paul's trade to the Lakers never gets vetoed. So if you go back down memory lane, back in 2011, Chris Paul at the time was no doubt the best point guard in the NBA. It was no debate, no discussion about it. This is how he got the nickname Point God out there on a nightly basis. And at the time, he was with the New Orleans Hornets. And I know, if you guys don't know, the New Orleans Hornets, the Hornets franchise was in New Orleans before they became the New Orleans Pelicans. That's a different story for a different day. But regardless, the franchise was the New Orleans Hornets at the time, and his contract was about to be up. And he informed that New Orleans Hornets that he no longer wanted to be a part of the team long term. So the Hornets had a decision to make at that point. And there were several teams. I believe every team was interested in Chris Paul, as long as you didn't have Steve Nash, of course. But the Lakers and Hornets agreed to a trade. Chris Paul was traded to the Lakers in a 3-team deal, which would have sent Lamar Odom, Kevin Martin, Louis Scola, and Goran Dragic to the New Orleans Hornets. Pau Gasol would have been traded to the Houston Rockets. The Houston Rockets were the 3rd team involved in this trade. And, of course, Chris Paul would have been traded to the Los Angeles Lakers. Now, the veto started in December of 2011 when Cavs owner Dan Gilbert complained, and I quote, said at the time, "I just don't see how we can allow this trade to happen." Now, Dan Gilbert was in a rocky situation, just coming a year off of losing his the biggest athlete to ever play a sport in Cleveland, Ohio history, which was LeBron James. So he might have been a little salty seeing other teams blossom in front of his eyes, and informed the NBA executives that we cannot allow this trade to happen. And at the time, the New Orleans Hornets were in the process of being sold. NBA President of Basketball Operations Stu Jackson felt the trade package that the New Orleans Hornets were receiving would make the franchise less appealing to opposing or available buyers that wanted to buy the franchise. So this was the roadblock. You have owners complaining about the trade. You have guys that basketball operations saying that the team will be less viable if you do not have Chris Paul there in New Orleans. So, short story short, the trade was vetoed. I never heard of a veto trade ever happen in sports history, especially in the NBA. One of the biggest trades that was ever vetoed in the world of sports. This unfortunately happened, and we never got to see Chris Paul and Kobe Bryant play together. Lord knows what the two of them could have done together. We're talking about the greatest shooting guard in the game at that time, and we're talking about the greatest point guard in the game at that time. Unfortunately, the trade never got discussed again and never happened again, and Chris Paul was later traded to the Los Angeles Clippers, which eventually set up Lob City with him, Blake Griffin, and then Doc Rivers being the coach with the Los Angeles Clippers, and the Lakers doing a whole different 180 in a complete different direction, trading to get Dwight Howard from the Orlando Magic and bringing in Steve Nash, which would turn out to be one of the biggest busts in NBA history. We're talking about biggest trios of Kobe Bryant, Steve Nash, and Dwight Howard. That unfortunately didn't happen, and that's what happened. That is my third biggest what if Chris Paul's trade was not vetoed. And at number 2, I really wish we would have got this one, but at number 2, LeBron James versus Kobe Bryant happening in an NBA Finals. If these two legends were ever faced off in the finals, this would have went down, in my opinion, as one of, if not the biggest NBA Finals in NBA history. Yes, we have seen a lot of great matchups in the NBA Finals, but there would have been nothing more chaotic, nothing more historical than having LeBron James compete against Kobe Bryant in a 7-game series for an NBA championship. These two would have brought the best out of their games for this series, just like they always did when they went head-to-head in competition. They always had great games with each other when LeBron James and Kobe Bryant did match up. Unfortunately, we only got it twice a year because LeBron James was always in the Eastern Conference. Kobe Bryant was always in the Western Conference when Kobe was a part of the league. And so these matchups, we didn't get much often, twice a year, maybe once a year, depending on the health status of Kobe Bryant as he got later on in his career. So LeBron James won the head-to-head matchups in their career against Kobe Bryant. He won the matchup 16-6. Closest we ever got seeing this finals take place was in the 2009 season when the Los Angeles Lakers were playing against the Denver Nuggets. Carmelo Anthony and company, they got past the Denver Nuggets. And then you had LeBron James and the Cleveland Cavaliers taking on the Orlando Magic, led by Dwight Howard at the time. Dwight Howard overcame and surpassed LeBron James of helping the Orlando Magic advance to the finals. Unfortunately, this dream matchup fell flat, and that was the closest we ever got to getting this NBA Finals matchup happening in the 2009 season. So definitely, if that would have happened, I would have said in 2009, depending on the rosters, especially I would have went with the Los Angeles Lakers winning the NBA Finals. They played against that 2009 Cavs team. LeBron James didn't have much help at the time. Kobe Bryant still had a prime Pau Gasol, Derek Fisher, and company. I just think they would have beaten the Cleveland Cavaliers in the NBA Finals. But that's my second biggest what if we ever got a LeBron James versus Kobe Bryant in the finals. And the number one thing, the biggest what if in NBA history to me is LeBron James never joins the Miami Heat. And I love LeBron James to death. You guys know, watching and listening, that is who I believe is the greatest basketball player of all time. But his decision making in the summer of 2010 forever changed the modern day landscape of the NBA. This is the reason why we are seeing super teams created in this era. This is why we're seeing several 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 Hall of Famers all team up together on one team just to win a championship. It's all due to the fact that LeBron James decided to sign with the Miami Heat and join forces with Dwayne Wade and Chris Bosh. But he didn't do it to destroy the game of basketball. He did it simply because all three of these future Hall of Famers had something in common. They could not surpass the Boston Celtics. Therefore, they all decided to team up so they could dethrone the Boston Celtics that was, at the time, still had Paul Pierce, Kevin Garnett, Ray Allen, Rajon Rondo, Kendrick Perkins, Doc Rivers coaching. They all teamed up to dethrone them, and that is how they ended up playing together. But the reason why that has forever changed the game is because we are seeing super teams being created on a yearly basis. Luckily, we don't have any right now. But the Miami Heat in 2010 had 2010 to 2014 had several Hall of Fame players playing together as a super team. You had the Los Angeles Lakers, who just did have a super team when they won in 2020. Tried it, I just said a few moments ago, in 2012 with Dwight Howard, Kobe Bryant, Steve Nash, and Metta World Peace. 2015 Cavs team with LeBron James, Kyrie Irving, Kevin Love. Warriors team 2017 to 2019. Ridiculous how Kevin Durant sold out and joined the Golden State Warriors. That is the reason why that happened as well. The Brooklyn Nets, how they decided to form Kyrie Irving, Kevin Durant, and James Harden all together all those skilled players. And it's the reason how teams win championships nowadays is because super teams. And luckily, we haven't seen that in the last few years with Milwaukee winning the championship with their original roster. Then, of course, the Golden State Warriors finally winning a championship without Kevin Durant and a super team. But this is what has transpired over the last decade, thanks to LeBron James. And at the time, he had several choices, but what team do I think LeBron James would have chosen? I think he had the New York Knicks as an option. At the time, the New Jersey Nets as an option before they became the Brooklyn Nets, the Chicago Bulls, the Los Angeles Clippers, and of course, returning to the Cavs. I think it would have been fitting for LeBron James to go to the Chicago Bulls, play with Derrick Rose, Carlos Boozer, Luol Deng, Joakim Noah. I think Dwayne Wade might have followed him. Time will we will unfortunately not be able to see that, but I think if LeBron James never would have joined the Miami Heat, we would never seen super teams being created the way how they're created nowadays. And I think LeBron James truly will only want to win 2 championships throughout his career, because he won 2 championships with the Heat and only won a championship once with the Cavs, only won a championship once with the Lakers. But that is my biggest what ifs in NBA history. Thank you guys for watching. Thank you guys for listening. This is your host, Thomas Tyree, signing off. And I'll see you guys on next week's episode.